Good morning, Brother Taylor. How are you?
I'm good, brother. Good to
It's
see
great.
you this morning.
Yeah, it's great to see you as well. And thanks for being my guest on the latest chapter of our oral history project, which we've entitled Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. Again, I'm Lewis Montgomery. I am the Kappa Phi Lambda historian, and it's my pleasure to interview Brother John Taylor. Brother Taylor, tell us where you're from originally.
Originally, I'm from rural Virginia, a little town called Meharry, and I grew up on kind of a farm. Our money crops were tobacco and cucumbers.
Hmm.
My father was a minister, and of course, church was a big part of our family as we grew up.
Sure. Okay. What was the
And I grew up in the
second crop
era
you
where there
mentioned?
was no electricity
Really?
in the community. So my father and I, while I was in high school, we wired homes.
Really?
And many of those homes are still standing where we converted to electric.
Okay.
So that's pretty well how we started. There were
Oh.
7 of us children.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, 20 years, well, actually 25 years, my junior came another child, a son.
Oh boy.
So a total of 8 of us.
Uh-huh.
And my father was not, he finished a private religious school. My mother finished community high school. But
Mm-hmm.
their thrust was that all of us would go to college.
Okay.
And my goal was not to go to college. It was to work with him, wiring houses, and he was a mechanic working on cars, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But he insisted that I would go. And there was a cousin of mine, the older cousin who taught at my high school, who was an alpha.
Mm.
And he started working on me, said, "You're going to go to college, boy." And so that's how I got started.
Okay, good. Now, did you go to college right after high school?
Right after high school.
Okay, great, great.
I went to college right after high school. In my second year of college, I was a wrestler.
Mm.
And I broke a leg in a wrestling match. And I dropped out of school for a year
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't make the classes. But while I was out from the leg break, I was in a farm accident.
Oh gosh.
And so that would extended it to a year.
Mm.
And then when I went back.
Okay. Wow. So that's a couple of pretty significant health issues that you had. So how'd you choose Virginia State, and tell us a little bit about Virginia State for those that may not know where it's located.
Okay, Virginia State is located in Petersburg, Virginia.
Okay.
And it's so 45-minute drive from home.
Okay.
And of course, being what we call a jackleg mechanic, I had my own car at that stage.
Uh-huh.
So I could drive to school backwards and forward. Well, I had the car at school, so I could come home anytime I got ready. And
Okay.
particularly on weekends to help my father.
Okay.
Because
Nice.
we had to work while we were at school as well as at home because all 8 of us ended up going to college.
That's pretty impressive.
One registered nurse, one reached the status of a judge, 2 of them MDs, and my ops after college was military.
Okay. Wow. So that's a pretty impressive one, that 8 kids went to college and the kinds of things that you all accomplished. Where were you in the birth order?
I was the number 2.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, you said, so after college, you decided to go into the military. Well, before that, because you became a member of the fraternity while in college. Tell us about the chapter that you joined, and how ultimately, you mentioned earlier that you had a cousin that was an alpha. So I just want to know more about how you ultimately became an alpha.
Okay, love to. Okay, my brother, while he was in college, he was a year ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
He pledged alpha.
Oh, great.
And that was based on the influence of this cousin who was also much older than us, but because actually he taught us in high school.
Hmm.
And so he worked on me. And then there were several brothers, now I call them brothers, who were my supporters when I was wrestling.
Hmm.
And all of them, well, another 9 of them pledged alpha.
Nice.
And these were guys that I had been hanging out with, and a couple of them had been on the wrestling team.
Mm-hmm.
So they worked on me, and I, in fact, joined the Sphinx Club. And at that time, it was a little different than it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And so we spent 2 semesters
Okay.
in the pledging process. And then I passed over in April, in fact, April 23rd of 1960.
That's pretty amazing. So you've been a member of the fraternity for 62 years.
Right.
Yeah. The way I know that, was able to do that quick math, is that I was born in 1960. So
Oh,
and I
okay.
turned 62 this past July. So that's pretty incredible. So you are one of not the senior most, but you're clearly one of the senior most members of Kappa Phi Lambda. That's fantastic.
Right. And after graduating, well, I was in our Army ROTC while I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
And after graduating, I told the Army that I was going to graduate school
Mm-hmm.
To get an exemption from going right after college into the Army.
Mm-hmm.
But I was offered a position with the Department of Agriculture, so I opted to go to work
Okay.
rather than going to grad school.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked that job for a little over a year, and I got a notice from the Army that I could either give up my commission or report to Fort Gordon, Georgia for training as a second lieutenant. So I opted to take the second lieutenant rather than to be subject to the draft.
Sure, absolutely. Makes perfect sense.
And my first assignment was Germany.
Hmm.
And at that time I was married.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get government transportation and government housing for my spouse, I opted to extend for a year because my original commitment was 2 years.
Okay.
So I extended for a year for that 3-year commitment, went to Germany, and the rest fell in line.
Okay. So what year did you go into the Army?
In 1963.
In 1963, got it. Okay.
Right.
And you mentioned Beta Gamma. I think there's a chapter.
Beta Gamma was my chapter.
Okay.
Still is. I'm still an active member of Beta Gamma.
Okay, that's fantastic. Got it.
So,
Yeah. Now, who was this cousin? You've mentioned him a couple times. You said he was much older than you, and he
yeah, his name was Marcus Cousins, or Rick's
okay.
Cousins.
Okay.
Rick's cousin. He was the son of my mother's uncle.
Okay.
Somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
He was a second cousin anyway.
Okay. Got it.
But he taught agriculture at the high school.
Okay.
And he was one who taught us how to weld and how to do carpentry work and all these kinds of things that was productive.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in charge of what we call a New Farmers of America, which was a Black group, and the 4-H club. Of course, it was a Black element of the 4-H club at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what got me to Virginia State with a scholarship in the field of agronomy.
Okay. All right. So you're going to become an agronomist was your plan at one point.
Right.
Okay.
So we followed him. He followed us all the way.
Okay. Nice.
Good brother.
Do you know what chapter he was made in?
He was made at Beta Gamma.
Beta Gamma as well. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
All right. You know about what year roughly?
No.
Okay.
I would guess in the 40s.
Okay, got it. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna look him up as part of this process.
Right.
And look up Beta Gamma. Okay, that's fantastic. So tell me some of your best memories of being a college brother.
Well, my best memories really are centered around these guys that we parted with, and they talked me into looking at the Alpha route.
Mm-hmm.
And we hung together. In fact, some of us still contact each other at least once a month to say hello. Not many of us left out of the 10 now, however. And all 10 of them were groom maids at my wedding.
Nice.
So the rest of it is just party history
Yeah.
and supporting each other with our classes and making sure that nobody fell behind. In
Hmm.
fact, all 10 of us did in fact graduate. So
Okay.
yeah.
That's wonderful. How active was sounds like Beta Gamma was quite an active chapter as well.
Yeah, it was. Beta Gamma was very active during that era. Right.
Yeah. Okay, great.
In fact, one of the brothers in our chapter here in Kappa Phi Lambda helped me cross the line.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Really?
Fitzpatrick.
Okay, Brother Fitzpatrick. Wow, that's pretty amazing. One of our charter members.
Right.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's a great connections. All right, very good. So then you mentioned you were in the military after college, and tell us about your military career.
Okay, military been initially I was going to do my 2, but I got the 3, and then toward the end of my 3rd year, which was in Germany, I got selected for early attendance to the career course, and I went there and did good. So that got me started. And of course, my next assignment from there was Vietnam. So I spent a year in Vietnam. After Vietnam, I came back to Germany and spent another 3 years there in Germany. So my job mainly had been because I was a military police officer.
Okay.
So most of my time was spent as provost marshal, what is considered chief of police.
Okay.
In rural life at the different posts that I was stationed. And then from being a provost, I was either a provost marshal or I transitioned into the Army Criminal Investigation Department, and I spent time there. And between investigation and intel, this was my history in the military.
Okay, got it. Now, how many years ultimately did you spend in the military?
24 years, 3 months.
Wow, that's quite a career.
In the military. And then my last station in the military was at Fort Meade, Maryland.
Okay.
And while there, I did a lot of coordinating with NSA. So when I retired, NSA offered me a position at NSA.
Okay, and that's the National Security Administration, for those that may not know.
Right.
One of our intelligence agencies, obviously.
Yeah. Then I moved from Army retirement over to NSA in their Intel Security Division, and stayed there for let's see, until 94, from 87 to 94.
Okay, and did you retire in 94?
And then I retired there and
okay.
Start doing other things.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, it's quite a military. So you mentioned Germany a couple times, and you mentioned Fort Meade. You mentioned Vietnam? Were there other places that you were stationed while in the military?
I was stationed at Fort Benjamin Harris in Indiana for a tour as the commander of the Criminal Investigation Detachment.
Okay.
So I spent three years there. From there, so my assignments were, I was at Fort Lee, Virginia for 2 years. That was after the advanced officers training for logistics management. From there, I went to Vietnam.
Okay.
So, and I was in Vietnam during the period of what we call Tet, or what they call Tet.
Oh, during the Tet Offensive.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
When stuff was not so good.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate. I was one of the ones that went over and came back without injury, and some of my buddies didn't. So I can
understand. So how did you come to Columbia, Maryland, and how did you get connected to Kappa Phi Lambda?
Okay, I was stationed at Fort Meade, Maryland, and got there from Japan in 1980.
Okay.
That was my last overseas assignment.
Mm-hmm.
And I did from 80 to 87. I was assigned at Fort Meade, where I was either provost marshal or in this criminal investigation department, all this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And decided it was time to retire from the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a gentleman called Clarence Toomer,
Okay.
who happened to have been an Alpha man.
Mm-hmm.
Told him, because I was telling somebody I was looking for a house in Columbia,
Mm-hmm.
considering retiring there.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody referred me to Clarence Toomer, who was a realtor.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, this house that I'm sitting in now is the house that I bought
Oh boy.
through
Wow.
Toomer.
That's great. Now, did you know that Clarence Toomer, brother Toomer, was an Alpha prior to getting referred to him?
No.
Oh, okay.
So I was just looking for, but one of the NSA persons that I had, contact with during my military time,
Mm-hmm.
he knew that he was an Alpha,
Ah, okay.
and he also knew that I was an Alpha. So I think
Okay.
that was the connection.
Okay.
And so we got hooked up, and Toomer introduced me to Kappa Phi Lambda. So I joined Kappa Phi Lambda, and that's been it.
Okay, that's great. So tell us about some of the roles that you've held in Kappa Phi Lambda. I know you're a former chapter president as well.
Okay, and while being here, I have served as the chaplain. I've served as the dean of pledges. In fact, two members of my group is still active with Kappa Phi Lambda,
Nice.
and I don't think they ever. Oh, I know one of them took a little break. In fact, I took a little break too from Kappa Phi Lambda for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I've served as the secretary. I've served as a treasurer, and then, of course, the last position was president.
Okay, that's great. So it's quite a lot of roles. What years were you president, and then during, also sort of related to that, are there any particular highlights from your presidency you'd like to tell us about?
Well, let's see. I got when you're young like me, your year memory skipped it. I was president. I should have noted that down. Let's see. Brother Oprah Jones, I was his vice, and following being his vice, I became president.
Okay, all right. Well,
you have to check those years.
Sure. We'll make sure it ends up in the write-up, the years that you were president.
Okay.
All right.
And I've served as chair of the Martin Luther King breakfast a couple times, and that's and the rest of it is just watching what the brothers are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the brothers are working. The brothers are working, and I'm one that's a believer in, like when I was president, you give them the task and you let them do it.
Sure.
I mean, you don't have to look over their shoulder every minute of the day. And
yeah.
So I thought I had a rather successful presidency.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So as you reflect on your time in the House of Alpha, what are some of your better memories of being an Alpha?
Well, some of my better memories really is kind of one-on-one during my Vietnam years.
Okay.
I met some brothers that were not officers; they were enlisted persons.
Mm-hmm.
And once they found out that I was an Alpha and they were an Alpha, their statement to me, although I had to lock up a couple of them as being chief of police, they would always say captain when I was a captain, or major, Taylor, don't worry, we got your back.
Oh boy, wow.
And this went through all of our, and that told me it's something.
Sure.
You can put a guy, lock him up, but still, he said, we know you're doing what you have to do, and we got your back.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. You mentioned again you retired and I think after 24 years. What was your rank when you retired from the
Lieutenant
Marine Corps?
Colonel,
You were a
oh
colonel.
05.
Okay, fantastic. That's congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
So you've been involved in the fraternity for again a long time, 62 years as we established earlier. Or have you had the opportunity to meet any quote famous alphas over the years?
Oh, back in the early days, I mean, this was even prior to becoming an alpha. So my father was a very active civil rights person,
Okay.
and he went to different meetings and was part of meetings, particularly like when they closed the schools in Prince Edward County, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the students from Prince Edward County, my parents had them to come over to Lunenburg County to stay with them to go to school.
Hmm.
So with these meetings with people like Dr. King and Lowry and those, I met them by way of taking my father to different meetings.
Wow,
But
that's pretty amazing.
never really worked with any of them.
Mm-hmm.
Only that I've shaken the hand.
Sure.
But I was a young buck then.
Sure, absolutely. Sounds like even before you were an alpha.
Right.
Yeah, that's
And then when everything really, see, I was overseas when things really started happening because I was in Germany in '63.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Martin Luther and Kennedy and all of these people were assassinated and stuff like that, I was out of the country.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that must have been very disconcerting to be out of the country when so much was happening, because obviously the period from really 63, well, really from 55 until 65 with the passage of Brown versus Board of Education, to ultimately the passage of the Civil Rights Acts and the Voting Rights Act. That was a very tumultuous time in this country. What was it like being overseas, especially being in Germany during that time when there was so much happening in the civil rights area here?
Yeah, it was, the German folks that we dealt with was very sympathetic to what was going on in the country. So there was no problem there. But of course, some of the other people, they kind of was glad it happened.
Mm.
So it was a dual-edged sword we had to deal with,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely understand.
But we had a way of dealing with it.
I'm sure you did, especially being in law enforcement. You had a very special way to deal with some things, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah. I have to ask you, Brother Taylor, about your beard. It is obviously it is a beautiful beard. It's iconic. It's one of the things that you are known for, and you've inspired me, and I'm sort of following in your footsteps. Tell me the clearly you didn't have the beard while you were in the military, so tell me about the origin of your beard.
Okay, the origin of the beard. The day that I retired from National Security Agency, I said no more shaving.
Okay.
Because I had done the 24 plus years, 24 and a half years in the Army and another group. So in 1994, in June, I left NSA, and that was my last shave.
Wow.
Now, the beard at one time was much longer than it is now.
Really?
It got down to at least another 4 or 5, another 6 inches longer.
Oh my gosh.
But when my granddaughter was born in when was she born? Well, she's 21 now. But anyway, when she was about 3 years old, she said, Pop, that's what they call me. I've never seen your face. So I cut the beard off.
Really? For your granddaughter? Wow.
For her. And then she said, well, can you put it back? I said, no, it's going to take a long time to put it back.
That is a great story.
So I started putting it back.
Sure. That's great. So essentially from 94, except for that one instance, you've had a beard.
Right. So now it's stopped growing. It won't grow more. It's finished growing for some reason.
Yeah, that's funny. That's interesting.
I guess age controls that.
Yeah, I guess so. Now I know you're one of your nephews, Brother Stacy Taylor, is in Kappa Phi Lambda. He's the former historian. He was my immediate predecessor. What role did you play in his becoming an Alpha?
Well, I think both being my brother and I both are Alphas. And Stacy's father died early on, and he was a young guy. And I kind of slipped in as a surrogate father to help his mother with things that a male might need to do for a growing young buck. And so we stayed in close contact and encouragement. And then he kind of stopped out to work in order to support his mother. Didn't go to college, this kind of thing. And we worked on him. You still got to go to college, boy. And so it was part of his growing up that I tried to influence to make him the man that an alpha man is. And then when he came to me and said he had gotten his degree, and I knew he was getting it because we were monitoring it.
Sure.
He wanted to be an alpha, and I was happy to recommend him.
That's great. So you was recommender? Okay. Right. That's fantastic.
And so he's doing a lot of traveling on his job, so it hasn't been as participatory as I would like to see in the chapter, but we'll get him. He'll be there.
Yeah. Well, and all there's a season for everything.
Right.
Yeah. So you mentioned your brother's an alpha. Your nephew is an alpha. Do you have any other family members that are alphas?
I have cousins.
Okay.
That are alphas. In fact, we had a family reunion with all of the alpha members in the family reunion to take a group picture. I think there were 16 of us.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So we, unfortunately, the family reunion T-shirt that we wore was purple.
Okay. Bit of an oversight.
We took this alpha picture, and I got a little riding about that one. How you gonna take an alpha picture in a purple shirt?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was the family reunion shirt.
Sure, exactly. That's funny. That's good. Well, Brother Taylor, as you reflect on being an alpha for most of your life, and the fact that the fraternity goes back to 1906, I mean, why do you think Alpha Phi Alpha is still so relevant today for men?
Well, unfortunately, much of what was happening, in fact, most of what was happening back in 1906 is going on right now. There has been some improvement in a lot of the Black men or the Black people, but we still got to fight for everything in order to get equality. And until an organization such as Alpha led the way in many activities, and it still is. And the drive still got to go forward, because it looked like to me, I call it the other people, their intent is to put us back where we were in the almost 1800s. And because they're fearful of the knowledge and the skill and the abilities that the Black folks bring.
Sure.
And until that's rectified, I don't know. It's just, but we got to still keep marching. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, it's interesting. I'm as a historian, but also just as a student of history. It is striking to me that the challenges that we're facing. Clearly, we have made a lot of progress as a people, but the fact that we're still having to fight for voting rights is a concern, and obviously that's something that has been on the books since the mid '60s. But again, we're seeing voter suppression laws being passed in many parts of the U.S.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we have to, as an alpha man, we got to broad out, do more than just alpha stuff, because my involvement now is with a group called the Bronze Villagers, where I helped them with their program. And they've got a program designed to start teaching a child at birth, teaching a parent when they have a child at birth, to start teaching them right then how to read and write. And so by the time they hit kindergarten age 4, they're doing math, they're reading, they can think for themselves and this kind of stuff like that. And our honcho, well, so happens my wife is the chair of that the organization, nonprofit, and their service is free to the community. And then I get involved with the genealogy because I think we need to know where we come from as a history. And I'm the treasurer of our genealogy chapter here. So, you know, these kinds of activities keep me busy.
Sure, absolutely.
And I'm the caretaker, I guess you call it, of our family properties that we still own back in Virginia. So I spend a lot of time. In fact, I spend more time in Virginia than I spend here at home, caring for rental property that we got down there.
That's great.
So it's just, we just figure we got to hold on to what we got and keep going forward.
Absolutely. That's well, you've been a great example of that. Before we close the interview, any final thoughts, Brother Taylor, on being an alpha, or anything else you'd like to add for the purpose of this oral history project?
I like what you're doing, and hopefully we can pass the, don't want to say pass the torch, that's really the wrong word, but we've got to keep the word out that good men are needed. Good men. And just to have the name of alpha doesn't mean to say a bad word, but just running around with the name doesn't cut it.
Sure.
You've got to do the work.
Absolutely.
Got to do the work. And the work has been, it's out there. And all I say, just keep marching, bro.
Absolutely.
Keep marching.
Well, Brother John Taylor, you've been a great example of being an active member of the fraternity for many, many years, and applaud you for all your efforts and your leadership. And as is the title of this oral history project, you're one of the giants whose shoulders we are standing on. And I want to thank you for all you've done and all you continue to do.
Brother, well, thank you. Thank you for your comment.
You're very welcome, brother. All right, well, you take care.
Okay, be
All
good.
right. Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.